I'd like to start talking. This first mini lecture will be about public speaking in general, and we're going to talk about it in general, talk about informative speech, persuasive speech, and special occasion speech. I'd like to start with a story. And I was at a conference about 2 years ago, and at this conference, the vendors who helped pay for the conference were invited to come up and deliver a little speech that told us about the company and everything. So this gentleman gets up and starts to talk about his company, I guess, and then he realizes that he's in front of a crowd of about, I don't know, 400 or 500 people. And all of a sudden, total silence on the stage. And then finally, someone got the attention of the person who was moderating, nudged her, and she went up on stage and she said, Richard, so you were going to tell us about your company? And he reached over to her and he whispered, of course it was in the microphone, so we all heard, sadly for him, I'm not feeling well. I really have a pain in my right side. I don't think I'll be able to continue. So she said, well, it's okay. Just, tell us your product. And so he reached over again and he said, no, I don't think I can continue this. I have a pain on my left side. So first he had a pain on his right side. Now he has a pain on the left side. And it was obvious that he had a freak out moment and he couldn't do it. He couldn't do the minimum of telling his name, his company, their product, and how happy he was to be there. He said, maybe I can do it later. And she said, oh, sure, you can come back, tomorrow when you're feeling better and tell us about yourself. Well, he never came back. We never saw him again. He was so upset, and probably what happened is he didn't prepare, he didn't practice, he didn't recognize his own weakness of being fearful of being in front of a large crowd. Maybe he'd never had to face a large crowd before and he didn't know he had that weakness. But in any case, through teaching communication studies and having public speaking as a component of it, we don't want you to have those moments on stage. We want you, if you have an uncomfortable moment, you have a tool to pull out of here and say, okay, here's something that I know I can do to get through this moment. Public speaking is sharing information with an audience. The audience could be 5, 10, 15, 20, bigger numbers of people. What I'm doing right now is public speaking. People who give speeches and upload them to YouTube, that's public speaking. Well, in your textbook, it talks about the information that you share in public speaking helps shapes the world. And how it does that, even if you're speaking to just 5 or 10 people, that's 5 or 10 minds. And you change their world when you give them information. Because they'll think about it, they'll pass that information on to family and friends and keep passing forward. Public speaking is giving information out. It could be persuading as well, it is, but it is standing in front of a group, sitting in front of a group. I do public speaking probably several times a week to different size crowds, and I have to be ready to do that. And there is a lot of preparation that goes into it. Something that I want to warn you of. Okay, I want to warn you in terms of when you have to deliver a public speech that you don't do this, whether it's for school or something in your home, family life. Do not write an essay and read it. That is not a public speech. That is an essay that you are reading. Now, if you want to be an incompetent public speaker, ineffective public speaker, then you would read your speech. There are only a few reasons why you should read a speech. Number one, there is somebody who is out there in the world that's a big person that we want reading their speeches. Can you guess? The President of the United States. We want the President of the United States to read from the teleprompter. Why? Because everything that the President says has an impact on the rest of the world. Words can incite war. Words can incite mobs. Words can incite really, really bad worldly behavior. So we don't want the President of the United States going off script. We want that person to read. However, if you are in the workplace and you've been asked to deliver a speech over a project that you are doing, you do not want to read it. If you are reading it, your boss will not hear you. Are you promotable if your boss doesn't hear you? No, you are not promotable if your boss does not hear you. So what types of speeches are there? There's 3 types of speeches. There's an informative speech, a persuasive speech, and a special occasion speech. The informative speech, you want an audience to understand a topic, an issue, or a situation. For instance, let's say that somebody was going to do an informative speech on texting and driving. Easily, it could be a persuasive speech. An informative speech would just be, here's the X amount of people who text and drive a day. And here is some information about our ability to concentrate on the road when we text and when we drive. So you're just giving them information, facts, giving them information. You're just wanting to teach them something, to educate them about something about a topic. Then a persuasive speech specifically wants you to change an attitude, a belief, or a behavior of some sort. For instance, we could easily take a speech about texting and driving and turn it into a persuasive speech by saying in the introduction, today my goal is to persuade you. And I want to persuade an attitude, or I want to persuade a belief, or I want to persuade a value. In a beginner speech, you don't want to try all 3. The easiest beginner speech is to change a belief or a behavior. So the behavior in a persuasive speech, my goal today is to persuade you not to text and drive. The informative speech would be, my goal today is to inform you about texting and driving. That's it. You're not telling anybody not to, you're just giving information. But over here with the persuasive speech, I want you to change a belief of a behavior or a value. And then there's the special occasion speech. You give special occasion speeches at weddings, funerals, birthdays, anniversaries. Maybe someone asks you to do an after dinner speech, a special occasion speech. And maybe you have a speech to deliver at a wedding. You want to practice it. And well, let me give you an example. When my grandmother died, everybody in my family said, Alma, we want you to do the eulogy. So it's fine. So I went around to people, her family, grandkids, children, all sorts of folks, and I said, what would you like for me to say? So I put all that into a special occasion speech and delivered it at my grandmother's eulogy, and I had an introduction, and I had a body, and I had a conclusion, and I said, today I want to share with you some information about my grandmother. And in case you didn't know the full person that she is, I just want to describe her to you through the words of, and then, just listed people. The special occasion speeches are speeches where they're filled with a lot of emotion, because it's, if a wedding you're happy, if it's a funeral you're sad, and in a speech you might try to insert some happiness into it. But when you start your speech in the introduction of each one of these, you have to clarify, are you doing an informative speech, a persuasive speech? Are you here, I'm here to inform you, I'm here to persuade you, what do you want to do? Now when you are a speaker who is well advanced, then you don't have to specifically say, I want to inform you, I want to persuade you. You can use different types of language, but in a beginner speech, you certainly want to do that. So for this first lecture, what we did was we talked about public speaking in general, and then we talked about 3 different speeches, which is an informative speech, a persuasive speech, and a special occasion speech. You will be delivering an informative speech and a persuasive speech. Okay, let's move on to our next piece of lecture.